Hello and welcome to Healthy Seminars. I'm your host, your moderator, Lauren Brown. I'm a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. My practice is in Vancouver, BC, Canada, called Acubalance Wellness Center. And I'm excited to be having Sandro Grassa give his presentation today on Stick It to the Skeptics, Insights into Acupuncture Research. Now, the lecture's actually already happened. I'm doing a redo of the intro because for whatever reason it got garbled on a recording. The lecture turned out great, but the intro did not. So I can let you know that you're about to watch an excellent presentation by Sandro. The slides are amazing and the content is great. So I just want to introduce you to Sandro Grassa, and then we'll go right into that recording. Sandro's originally from Portugal. He's a graduate of the Irish College of Traditional Chinese Medicine and a fellow of the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine, the ABRM. He did his dissertation for his master's in science at the Northern College of Acupuncture, and his study focus was on acupuncture for polycystic ovarian syndrome, for PCOS. He's a member of the Board of Directors of Evidence-Based Acupuncture. Sandro is also an avid speaker and promoter for research and evidence. He gave a lecture on this topic at the Tau Congress in Austria, which was well received. Sandro is a lecturer and researcher at the Northern College of Acupuncture and currently sits on the board of the Obstetrical Acupuncture Association. Sandro, many of you know because he's a senior moderator at Healthy Seminars. And for the speakers and those of you that take courses at Healthy Seminars probably have had Sandro as your tech support, which he does with good humor and patience as well. So we're very fortunate to have our Sandro offer this presentation. So I look forward to hearing this again, and I'm glad that you guys have tuned in to watch this lecture.
Pleasure to be part of this team, and thank you for making it all work, and I really, really appreciate it. For everyone who's here and is watching this as a recording or watching this live here, I really appreciate spending the time with me. I prepared a couple of slides, but Lauren already went through this. I always like to just show as a disclaimer of what I'm involved in, and just to give you an idea. So there's nothing sketchy out there. So yeah, just to let you know, as Lauren said, that I do work for Healthy Seminars, and this is being offered through Healthy Seminars, but it actually came from that chat with Lauren. And as Lauren said, this was the core of this presentation was actually a part of a presentation that I did for the Tau Congress in Austria, and which was my only outing in 2020. And as you all know, 2020 has been a little bit different from all the other years that we have experienced. So it was really good to actually be able to go back to this and just present it in a different way, as Lauren was saying, that focuses more on the results and what we can take from the research. And just a very, very quick word on how this came about. I really appreciate it. And I think that, the profession needs more people like this. Lauren Brown, apart from, okay, yes, I work for Healthy Seminars, but makes this stuff available. And some of the content is free and you can watch like this one. Some of them are CUs that you get to watch at your convenience. Healthy Seminars actually helped me when I was studying and to reach a lot of the researchers and a lot of the lecturers that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to, or it would have been way more difficult. So it was really fascinating for me to know that, first of all, research is not a topic that everybody loves, or at least not as much as I do. And when I said to him, we were talking on that phone call, and he was like, yeah, you know what, let's do it. So yeah, it was really interesting, and it's a pleasure to work with him. And like many others in our profession, it's all about talking about it rather than having to agree on something. Yeah, sometimes, and a lot of the times we do, but we also have to remember that just like this talk, I'm not going to present this to you as the ultimate truth. I'm going to present this to you as my view, and I'm grateful for Lauren to provide the platform to reach you. We're going to get to the end of the talk. We may or may not agree on some of the things, but this is my point of view, and I would love to hear your point of view as well. Everything within context, and I actually just found this only the other day, and I really, context matters. And I know that the way that I deliver kind of goes in like a storytelling kind of thing, but it's important for us to know where we come from, where we start, and what is the message that we want to pass on to everybody else. So if I could give it, this is going to be a theme throughout this presentation, one sentence that rounds up what I just been saying, is that we're all part of this. I was watching a lecture by this professor just only the other day. I still have the post-it here from saving that quote, where he said, communication is part of the process of doing science. We're all in this together. So the people writing the papers, the journals publishing them, when we read them, putting that information in practice in our clinic, and now even getting to know other papers from what I'm going to show to you here, and then communicating that, that's all part of science. So what, again, just for the context, what you will see from my slides is that the theme from the slides, the background, you will see pieces of the puzzle. So like the jigsaw puzzle is always the way that I look at pretty much everything that I do. And I like to look at research that way too, where we all have different ways of doing this jigsaw puzzle. Most people go and do the edges first. Everyone contributes with one piece, and then all of them at the start, they don't really make sense. But then when you put it all together, it forms the bigger picture. That's what I like that's the way that I like to present to you. The only thing is, as I said, when I presented this originally, the title of it was Research, the Best of 2020. And there's a few issues with that sentence there. First of all, best and 2020 on the same sentence just don't sound right at all. And also research is something that I'm very well aware that for a lot of us just sounds like statistics and complicated numbers and lab work and very lengthy papers that are in a very difficult language that it's really hard to understand. So I know all that, so I'm going to try and break it down a little bit. And as I said to you, with this theme of, I'm going to bring some of the pieces of the puzzle to you and see where we can go from there. So given the context that I was looking at research that was within the last 12 years, this one here was published in JAMA Oncology, that's in December 2019. And as you can see, clinical evidence for association of acupuncture and acupressure with improved cancer pain. Systematic review meta-analysis, so really, really worthwhile checking out. Work from, as I said, like there's my new job as a researcher, and people that I'm really proud to know and to learn from. A Cochrane review on acupuncture or acupressure for pain management during labor. Someone that I had the pleasure of meeting actually last year in 2019 in June, and won an award from the Society of Acupuncture Research for a research, Simone. And again, giving the idea, as I said before, of taking one sentence out of it and kind of go with it to show and to talk to other people about it. Prenatal acupuncture reduced depression, stress, and distress, whilst also being well tolerated and free from adverse events. Adapting to the reality that we are in, where a lot of the places are in lockdown, or it's more difficult for people to access the services that they were getting to before, even in terms of healthcare. So there's a paper on self-management strategies to consider for women with endometriosis symptoms. So this is a very good one to know from even for your clinic or for patients that you can't see as much as you were before, and just having something that you can give some advice to them. And I always say this, so I'll stick to it. I don't really talk much about animal studies in my talks. And I always joke that I don't know about you, but I don't really see that many rats in my clinic. I tend to see humans. But this one, just because I don't like talking much about it, I still use them because I like to get the juicy bits about the mechanisms and what they can get from it. And this one was actually out on my birthday, and it relates to something that is close to the area that I research because it's glucose metabolism in chronic stress. So it's kind of like important to know in terms of mechanisms because of PCOS. So it's a lot of information. I'm giving you all these headings, and you can see the studies and everything. I'm not saying that you need to go and read all that, but if you want to go for a ride and if you want to go on this journey of getting information from it, it's relatively easy. Again, you can see I have the paper there, found it online, take a few sentences from it and see. It doesn't have to be a very complicated RCT. It could be a qualitative pragmatic study. It can take, again, having that one sentence that really sticks out and be about something as to me, cool as this, that what we do in the clinic for ourselves, we know that it's not just the acupuncture, it's not just our needles. And again, one sentence from that paper that I took, women felt that the TCM self-care advice was related to positive outcomes for their dysmenorrhea and increased their feelings of control over their menstrual symptoms. The impact of that sentence, more so than the study itself, but the impact of that sentence to a consultant, can you imagine? They would say, well, tell me more about this. And a lot of the times, if you start talking about your needles and what you do and how you do it, again, they're not qualified in TCM. So you might lose them because they don't know what you're talking about. So at some point during my presentations, I always say to everyone that from growing up, from being really, really young, I was always about finding out how things work. And I really like this quote because I always take it for my own, what I want to know about acupuncture. I don't want to believe that it works. I want to know how it works. I want to see, I want to learn those mechanisms and get, as I said, the juicy bits from it. So when I was preparing this talk, it was just close to the time when Professor Hugh McPherson passed away, and the connections between his work and how I was involved in stuff that was happening in the college, and the fact that the college where I studied, where I did my master's degree, was the college that Hugh started over 30 years ago, and had an amazing opportunity of replacing talks, unfortunately, because he wasn't well, but that experience of learning from him and taking him. And I want to kind of just extend those 12 months a little bit and bringing you again on that journey of seeing how research can help you when you're communicating with other people, and taking the example of his work. 2018, you have a paper here that he was part of. There's a lot of other people there that, the names might be familiar, or might actually know them. There's over 20,000 people, 20,000 patients on that paper, 39 trials, and 4 key things taken from that. Acupuncture has a clinically relevant effect on chronic pain that persists over time. If you remember this paper, and the one even before this was the one that 6 months later, a year later, the effects are still there. So this was just to take down you go for acupuncture, you feel well for a while, but then it comes back again. No. We have evidence that that's not the case. The effect of acupuncture cannot be explained only by placebo effects. The factors in addition to the specific effects of needling are important contributors. So it's telling us that it's not just our needles. There's other things that we do in the clinic that do matter as well and contribute to it. And, again, almost like most importantly, to take something big from it is the referral for acupuncture treatment is a reasonable option for chronic pain. And what this means is that then health insurance providers or someone, healthcare regulators that would be looking at acupuncture to offer it as part of healthcare for patients. It's a bit biased for me to talk about him, because to me it was always like, what is he doing now? What's the next thing? And he was always leading the way. And this was out in 2019, and he wasn't well at the time, and he was still putting papers out. And again, putting a paper out that is important for everyone to know, especially for those designing the trials, that acupuncture is a complex multi-component intervention. It's not just the needling. We do more than that. And then, and this is going to link with what's going to come up next, most of you would know Professor Hugh McPherson has linked to a lot of pragmatic trials, and him saying that the pragmatic trials are particularly suited to evaluating the impact of complex interventions. So a good way to analyze what we're doing in the clinic, and then advising the use of secondary analysis that to be used to explore whether there are clear associations between these non-needling components and clinical outcomes. And this is going to come up again, and you'll see, hopefully you'll understand why that is important. So if we go even further back, and it's almost like this is one of those that I carry with me all the time, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of us, as I said, that when you hear the word research, you just go like, oh, research, and acupuncture, there's all these problems and whatever. And I like this because this paper, again, a lot of names that are really, really well known and throughout the years of putting out loads of research and being really important for us. And this particular paper said that there is this common opinion that acupuncture cannot be studied using randomized control trials. And this group disagreed. What they did encourage us to do was to get clinicians and scientists to recognize that much patience and hard work will be needed before we fully understand how best to use the tools at our disposal, as well as developing new ones to study this complex form of treatment. So rather than saying that it cannot be studied, let's put some patience and hard work into this and understand the tools that we have, and maybe even we need to develop new ones and make it better. I like that. And that he did, developing new tools and giving new things for to further our profession. So for those who are familiar with this, again, this is just a very superficial look at this. I'm not going to go into loads of detail, but you can check this online. He was involved in development of Stricta, which added that component for clinical trials of acupuncture. And in 2018, towards the end of 2018, he put out this paper actually with someone that I have a particular connection with, Simon Svenkrud. He was my first supervisor when I was doing my master's degree. And he was working with Professor Hugh McPherson. And they looked at papers between 1994 and 2015. And they noticed that the journals that endorse Stricta have a better record in terms of reporting quality. So there is a new tool for the time. Now everybody kind of knows about it, but there was a new tool for the time to go, we need better tools, here it is. And it's having an effect. It's producing better research, or at least they're publishing better research. Another tool, something that came up more recently, that's from 2017, this is from the group over in Australia at Western Sydney University, and that's the Nickman scale. Not many of us know about it. I use it for my own research. I really like it. I love checklists because it's kind of showing you the path. It's kind of leading you along as you go away doing it. And one of the things that it added to the Stricta component, so it's not replacing the Stricta, but it's actually adding more stuff to it. One of the big factors in it is the practitioner training. So for those who are familiar with the checklist on Stricta, the checklist on the Nickman scale has a little bit more in-depth analysis on the needling, the type of needling and the needling stimulation, the duration and frequency of the treatment, and that practitioner training as well. So that all goes towards that checklist. So I was really happy when I saw that from the people that were joining, that Matthew Bauer was joining us here, because I really love that picture. That was before Austria. That was 2019 was the last time that I was allowed out to go somewhere and meet these amazing people. But I just like the picture because two of the people that participated on that paper are on that picture. And that's Matthew Bauer and John McDonnell, and Natalie Saunders as well, part of it. And this paper came out earlier in 2020. Lauren interviewed Matthew Bauer here on Healthy Seminars. And again, it's really, really fascinating to hear and to discuss these terms about dosage. And what this means is something that a lot of us have mentioned before, of being one of the issues with the differences between what we do in clinic versus what you see in research, which is dosage. So looking at how many treatments over what period of time is, and what type of acupuncture therapy, like even with needle manipulation, and for how long, how many treatments, how many sessions of it are needed to achieve that maximum therapeutic effect. So again, that particular paper mentioned something that we've heard about before, and this is where things kind of start to link together, that subgroup analysis to measure the influence of different factors on clinical outcomes. So whenever you get the paper, you get that systematic review or that meta-analysis, and you have all that information, you go on to subgroup analysis and you see what else is hiding in there. And there's another example for that, especially for those who work in fertility. They will know, they kind of know what's coming. And again, those factors, the main ones that they brought up, that include the treatment frequency, the total number of treatments, and the training and experience of acupuncturists involved in the study design and the delivery of the intervention. So again, you see how this links with the Nickman scale. This is something that it's not published yet, but I made a decision of just making it available to you. I can't talk about it too much, but on my own study, that this did come about, and the issue of dosage, and it's something to explore further. And as soon as information is out, I will make it available to all of you. But 61% of the practitioners were actually seeing patients once a week. But the qualitative data analysis actually revealed that they would prefer to see the patients twice a week. And that would actually be more in line with the literature in terms of acupuncture for PCOS than actually the 61% that are seeing them only once a week. So it's really interesting stuff. And as soon as I'm allowed to talk more about it, I will make it available to all of you. As I said, this kind of links the dosage and all of this, and the subgroup analysis will link to, for those who are here that are more related to fertility and gynecology, IVF. This was something that, again, was making the headlines a while back. This is from December 2019. Leholm de Ruben, we've had amazing discussions. It's always a pleasure to get a text or an email from her and just geek out about stuff. And she wrote that the characteristics of treatment more favorable to improving birth outcomes included more treatments, the timing of the treatments in the period before and of the day of the embryo transfer, and using a modified Paulus protocol on the day of embryo transfer. And again, this is a short lecture, but for those who are, research literate, they will know where that is going with the modified protocol. This is manualization, something that is being used in acupuncture research, and it's a big, big tool that we have that we can use for our trial designs as well. In very quick words, what that means is that instead of having a set protocol for everyone to be treated with the same points, with the manualization, what you can do is have a set of points that all the patients are getting, and then having kind of like a pot of points where the practitioners can pick some of those without distorting the results from the treatment itself, if you know what I mean. So that's just, again, very, very superficial explanation, but it takes away one of the things that we spoke about a lot, which is, oh, they're not doing the same that we do in the clinic because we use different points at different times. That is also possible in research. We can also do that with research. And when Lee wrote that paper was towards the end of 2019, and earlier in 2019, this was the paper that a lot of you would be familiar with because this was all over the news. And again, it was, look, what I like to do is to take one or two key sentences from it. So 3 or more treatments and the use of a modified treatment protocol were significant effect modifiers on clinical pregnancy. This was stuff that came out from the subgroup analysis, not from the systematic review and meta-analysis itself. It was from, as recommended before, from that subgroup analysis. Another key sentence, and I'm always very aware of bringing this up, but I like to kind of like stirring the pot a little bit. The timing of treatment was also a significant modifier, with treatments post the day of embryo transfer showing no benefit on clinical pregnancy. Now, in my opinion, you can take that either one of two ways. You can take that as a negative and be really upset that, oh, I don't even want to talk about that paper because it says that treatments post the day of embryo transfer showed no benefit. Or you can take that in the positive way and say, hey, this is a great thing to bring to the consultant in the IVF clinic and make this cost effective, because now the treatments that we were doing after the transfer, let's change that to before, because the paper actually says that 3 or more before make more difference than doing anything after. You want to be cost effective, right? Everybody in the clinics loves to hear this. So again, key sentence, acupuncture appears to have a significant effect on clinical pregnancy rate, independent of comparator group, when used in women who've had multiple previous IVF cycles, or where there was a low baseline pregnancy rate. Again, this was a key thing coming out of it. The clinics would like to hear this. These are the ones that have tried before, didn't work, or they tried and they had something happen and they just did not carry the pregnancy through. Again, you're helping the clinics with those tough cases. So by now, you've either turned off or you're there sitting going like, wow, this guy runs on caffeine and Duracell batteries. I wish I was that excited. I like connecting the dots, and I'm a visual guy. I like to see things. So when stuff like this happens, I look at it and go like, oh yeah, I can have that in the clinic. I know what that is. We all know what that is and what that means and the relationship. And earlier this year, when I did my Cochrane training, I looked at the cover of the book and I was like, oh yeah, that kind of reminds me of, I know where that comes from, because that kind of comes from the idea of the network meta-analysis, but that picture just kind of reminded me of the other one. And one of the things that I really like is systematic reviews. And I always kind of half joke and say that, you know, from the moment that there was the first systematic review in Chinese medicine, when they put all that information together in one book in many chapters and just gather all that information and putting it in one book. So it's context and it's ways of describing what you want to communicate to people. So to come to the end and to talk about the key papers, there were two that kind of made the cut, and one of them was the one that Lauren already mentioned. But the other one, I bring this up because it was a colleague of mine that is part of this group that is doing amazing work in the US, the Hospital Handbook Project, and Megan Gale, like she does tremendous amount of work and tremendous hours of work as well. And when I asked one of the colleagues there, Bobby, I said, like, if there was one or two papers that you would have to present, tell me which one, because I know about one, but I want kind of like to have like 3 or 4 that I can pick from. And he said, this one. And I was like, oh, okay. I probably did see it, but it didn't really, what's so special about it? And he said, well, read it. And when I read it, I was like, okay, it's migraines? Is it because of, okay, I suffer from migraines. I read a lot about migraines. There wasn't anything kind of standing out to me until you dig a little bit deeper and looking at how the study was actually designed and how this is important for us to know, because one of the things that we hear all the time is about, oh, the placebo, and you're in the clinic with the patient and that all helps with the intervention. So what they did for this paper was actually point number 1, and again, this is a very superficial talk, so I'm not going to talk about sham acupuncture, but you have a non-penetrating needle for sham acupuncture. So basically not even touching the skin. So that was point number 1 with one of the arms of the study. The other one was that they used an additional arm for the treatment, which was a controlling for the therapeutic effects of contact with a clinician, which, as many people say, contribute to strong placebo effects in migraine trials. So they had the acupuncture, the sham acupuncture without touching the skin, and the other one with contact with a clinician. And just to give you an idea, actually, one of the things where you start seeing the Nickman scale being used and aspects of it being accounted for, they actually reported on the study that the practitioners working on the trial were highly skilled. They had 5 years experience, and the treatment sessions involved 10 hours of acupuncture in total. So then we come to this paper. And as I said, I always mention this, I'm not a big fan. Actually, in evidence-based acupuncture, Mel she loves talking about mechanisms, and their talks are way better, and a lot of the times go way over my head as well. So I have to go and watch it again. So I'm not a big fan of talking about animal studies, but this one really, really caught my eye because of, first of all, the cytokine storm thing. Like, this is, you know, it's 2020 when we're recording this, right? But looking at the title, and I'll be very, very honest, I didn't recognize the name of the professor. I looked at the title and I was like, oh, this is like really a good example of why people don't read as much research. Like, look at the title of it, right? And, you know, interesting stuff from it. But again, always in the back of my mind that this is an animal study. But yeah, a good sentence to have from it, right? Like, acupuncture stimulation influenced how animals coped with a cytokine storm. So then you start, this is like, you've seen the pattern here, you start digging in a little bit deeper into the paper. So treatment A, they got low intensity electroacupuncture, 0.5 milliamps, to a specific point on the leg, that was Zeus and Lee, or stomach 36. And they realized what it did. And again, I'm just going to talk about it like this because you can go even deeper on this and go into all those aspects of the vagus adrenal axis and what it did and whatever. But I'm giving you like the starting point and how you can use it, right? And how it starts to make sense to you on how a relatively complicated paper can still be used by someone just starting to read research. Treatment 1 did one thing. The animals treated this way, They got lower levels of 3 key types of inflammation-reducing cytokines, and they had a greater survival than control mice. So they did that treatment, and they could see 60% of the ones who got treatment survived, 20% compared to 20% of the untreated ones. And this was interesting. So they could see that, that was already really interesting from the paper itself. The vagus adrenal axis could be activated through electroacupuncture from the point on the leg, but not from the point on the abdomen. Again, you see, taking one sentence out of it, that's interesting. So there's a difference there. What you do in the clinic matters. Point selection,
I'm not
right?
sure I understand.
Well, see, Siri doesn't understand. How can we understand if Siri doesn't understand? Treatment B, high intensity electroacupuncture, so in this case, 3 milliamps, to the same point in the leg and to the point on the abdomen. That stimulation activated something else. And on this treatment, the timing of the treatment was critical as well. They noticed that the high intensity stimulation of the abdomen produced markedly different outcomes depending on when the treatment occurred. Again, you can read the paper and you can see what they were doing with different timing, but that's not the point. We're looking at a superficial level here. And again, key sentence from it. Animals treated with acupuncture immediately before they developed the cytokine storm experienced lower levels of inflammation during subsequent disease and fared better. Timing mattered for the treatment. By contrast, animals that received acupuncture after the disease onset and during the peak of the cytokine storm experienced worse inflammation and more severe disease. How many times do we struggle in the clinic to tell patients, look, this is preventative. It's better if you get the treatment before, when something's already going on, it's going to take a little bit longer. But how does that really work? You have mechanisms, you have papers explaining, it's a paper, it could have been a book, right? But there's somewhere that you can go and read about it and show to other people why that is. Really important to me, and I was talking to Lauren and Lorianne at the start of this, is remember context. Remember how you tell people about these things and don't go overboard. Because you've just seen slides showing that there's mechanisms now showing that the points that you use are important. You've seen slides previously that everything you do in the clinic matters. It's not just the needles, your interaction with the patient matters. You've seen from the previous paper that the timing of the treatment matters. You've seen from the IVF paper as well that the timing did matter as well, the number of treatments. So you see, everything you do in the clinic matters and is important. Your communication is also important. And what I'm going to show you now is almost like in one slide, what I would like you to, even if you're not as pumped as I am about research, that you pay attention to how you put this information out there for the patients. So at the top, you see a quote is from the research team, and it says, the new study is an important step in mapping the neuroanatomy of acupuncture. At the bottom is something that I took, and it says the findings demonstrate how the same stimulus could produce dramatically different results depending on location, timing, and intensity. Harvard, which was where the professor was from, on their website, they stated the new study shows acupuncture can tame inflammation on mice, providing a critical step towards defining the neuroanatomical mechanisms underlying acupuncture. The media decided that that was a good headline to go with. Please don't do that. That is way beyond the context, and it takes away from the message that is important here, is that we're onto something, and you go straight to that, you're losing people straight away. So I know that Deborah Betts is here, and I kind of took this from Deborah Betts and, from what we do with evidence-based acupuncture. As I said, I hope that you are now at least half as pumped as I am when I had to prepare this lecture. Research literacy, why is it important for the acupuncturist? For best practice. You learn about stuff that is happening right now. A book takes years to write, and a book goes out of date, at a certain time. New treatments, new developments, new things. The classics are great and I love them, but there's other things that we do now. Professional credibility, having those key sentences that you can throw at people when they say, yeah, tell me more about what it does. You have those key sentences there to have that communication, and engage with other healthcare practitioners. You know, the consultants, the nurses, the people that speak that language, they don't understand TCM. So as much as we love TCM, we should have a common language. I'm Portuguese. I'm speaking English to you because if I was speaking Portuguese, only a few people that are here know that David is here and he speaks Portuguese, but then only one person would understand. But if I speak English, more people can understand-ish because of my accent, but you know, what can you do? So one advice, if you want to explore this more, check out the CARE guidelines. So that's care-statement.org. So CARE is for case report, and write your case histories within the guidelines. You know, if they're published, great. If they're not published, you know, at least you have them written in proper guideline format. Tell everyone out there what you're doing in the clinic, but do it according to the guidelines so that it can be published or that it can contribute to the body of research. So we worked on the title and we didn't change it that much, but when Lauren and I were talking about coming up with a title, you know, the skeptics thing had to be there because it's like the hook, you know, how do I deal with these people? So we got this from William Bankston once that he said about I'm a skeptic. You know, I'm okay with skeptics and I want everybody to be skeptical. What I don't want to waste time is on deniers. And to me, that makes perfect sense in the work that I do with EBA, the work that I do with healthy seminars, the work we do with, you know, even our own relationships. If you're talking to someone that doesn't want to listen, it doesn't matter what you're going to say to them. They don't want to listen and they will not listen. They will be like that on that picture. And most of them are online behind the computer screen and behind the keyboard, you know, the keyboard warriors. So you have to choose. Do you want to spend your time fighting the keyboard warriors that don't want to listen? Doesn't matter how many of these papers you show to them. Or do you want to show them something different, talk to the skeptics, forget the deniers, and try and engage with people that actually have something constructive to bring to the table? There's other courses on healthy seminars that are really, really good. As I said, Mike Armour, and I've learned loads from him. I keep on learning from him, and like it's amazing to be working under his wing now. It's a pleasure and a privilege. The EBA, when we did our symposium, healthy seminars helped, and I was like proudly wearing two hats. And Gil Barzilay has some lectures here as well that touch upon research and give you an idea of how you can go a little bit further on this. Other people, Deborah's here, John McDonald, Sarah, you know, great colleague, and also a graduate from the Northern College, Arya Nilsson, who actually, you know, even last year we met and we had great chats about it. It's lovely. We love to geek out about this sort of stuff, like Lauren said. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you for listening to my enthusiasm. And again, thank you, Lauren, for the opportunity. And just to say to those teachers that I mentioned the names, because to me, they will always be teachers that are here. I just want to say a big, big thank you to you all, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you.